All right. Well, President Trump says that strikes on Iran were devastating and they're done. Israel has agreed to this assessment. Whether it is or isn't destroyed, what we hope this means is that the U.S. is done there. No do-overs, no backsies. This is the first time in my life that I do not want to question a government narrative. I want this to be done. I don't want to go back at all. Here's the president confirming this just today.
A statement came in from the Atomic Energy Commission of Israel, and I just wanted, this is an official letter, and they're very serious people, as you know. The devastating U.S. strike on Fordo destroyed the site's critical infrastructure and rendered the enrichment facility totally inoperable. It was devastated. We assess that the American strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities has set back Iran's ability to develop nuclear weapons for many years to come. This achievement can continue indefinitely if Iran does not get access to nuclear material, which it won't. It's so sad that that whole thing had to go.
All right. Well, the administration is having to defend the destruction after the Washington Post reported that these sites were not destroyed and that leaked intelligence reports said as much. And the president is saying those reports were incomplete. They were premature. It wasn't ready for submission. It was a rough draft, so to speak. And you know what? I'm willing to participate in this because as an anti-war channel, we absolutely do not think that the United States needs to do another go-round. Like I said before, no do-overs, no backsies. Well, retired Colonel Douglas McGregor is going to join us so he can tell us what he actually thinks of this intelligence. So, Colonel, thank you for joining us. Given that no one was killed in the initial strike or the retaliation, do you think we should leave it there? Can you see me winking at you right now?
Listening to audio, we're winking.
Right.
We're just going to go along with this deception.
What do you think?
Well, let me tell you, I'm afraid to challenge Natali. She's pretty ferocious about it. So,
smart move, Colonel.
I was going to say, you would know more about it than I do. Now, listen, more and more interesting things are coming out. You pointed to the Washington Post. There's also additional information from various sources that President Putin appears to have played a role in persuading the Iranians to go along with this. Beyond that, I don't know too much. But the bottom line is whatever we hit was not significant, and we didn't seem to have made much difference to that entire program. The real question at this stage is, what about this ceasefire? What's its purpose? What's the basis for it? Is there some plan to go forward and craft some sort of compromise? I mean, what's the expectation? Because we also know that Israel is running out of cash and missiles. Their economy is about to implode, and they've run out of missiles. By the way, we're having problems with our own missile inventories in the Navy. We shot large numbers of missiles in support of Israel's defense. Those destroyers have to go back to port and reload. And then Raytheon reported earlier today that they have a problem with rocket motors, that while we build some components, we're dependent on foreign sources for the critical components in our rocket motors. We produce, if it's a good day, 660 missiles a year. This is the Patriot THAAD missile complex. That's going to be gone in a few days, frankly, in any modern war. So I don't know what's going on. It looks to me like there are a lot of considerations here. What does it really mean? I don't know. But I think President Trump took a long walk out on a very slender limb when he told everybody that the war was over, that he is the master of the universe and he solved this problem and brought peace. Good luck with that. I hope so, but like Natali, but I don't think so.
Well, I mean, if the deception is there was never a nuclear program to begin with, but then we're led to believe that it was just destroyed. So we know it wasn't there, but it was just destroyed. Is Israel going to go along with this quote unquote deception? I mean, after all, they wanted regime change. So is Israel just going to sort of sit back and say, oh, good, hey, great. I'm glad this part of our chapter in our history is done now.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought up regime change because I think that's the least likely outcome at this point. There's a lot of evidence to suggest the country is pulled together more now than ever in its more recent 30, 40, 50-year history. Of course, there was an expectation because you have Azeri Turks and Arabs and Balukis and Kurds, different ethnic groups living within the country. that they could be stirred up to revolt against central authority in Tehran. That hasn't worked very well. Don't see much evidence that that will happen. Haven't seen any American or Israeli flags on the streets of Tehran and people gathering by the hundreds of thousands demanding regime change. You know, I think it's very clear that Israel needs a break. I'm sure that the Iranians will welcome this, and they're going to get more technical expertise, support from Russia than they've ever gotten before, along with more support and supplies from China. But I think the Israelis in particular right now need help and support to deal with the economy. And frankly, they've run very, very low on missiles. So I don't know what happens in the future. I don't know if this lasts 2 days, 2 weeks, or 2 months, but I don't think it's over, because fundamentally, the cause of everything is Gaza. And Gaza continues. And I'm sure you've seen this new report that was published in the Cradle that's Harvard linked, and it talks about 400,000 dead in Gaza. How many of those women and children is anybody's guess. But as long as this continues, nothing will end, because virtually everyone in the region has concluded that they can't coexist with Israel, because Israel refuses to coexist with them.
Yeah, that the number
current leadership of Israel, that let's be clear that there are plenty of Israelis that do want to coexist in the Middle East.
Really?
They just don't have any power.
Really?
Well, I don't know if plenty. I don't think I can quantify that. We do see peace movements inside of Israel, but we don't know. We know that the Netanyahu government was on the verge of ending before the war began. So what is your assessment, that Israelis do want to continue this war?
I think Mr. Netanyahu's policies have a lot of support. And I don't know if that's 70 or 80%. I know that there are Israelis who are no less horrified by all of this than you and I are, but they're a pretty small minority. I think the vast majority still support the policies, but I think overwhelmingly nobody likes the man. That I think you can bet on. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he doesn't have support for what he's trying to do. Hate is a very powerful weapon. There's a lot of hatred in Israel for the people that live around it, and particularly the Arabs that live in it. And I think that's the biggest issue. And I just don't see how you get anywhere in the region until you deal with that. You've got to put an end to this mass murder and expulsion in Gaza.
I know people who've actually worked for Netanyahu, and they specifically have called him corrupt, that he's an absolutely corrupt politician, but they absolutely support this position. So they can, on the one hand, I guess, look past the corruption and support this destruction in Gaza. Colonel, the NATO summit happening right now. President Trump gets off the plane, puts on a USA hat, is having meetings with people coming to him. What is your assessment of the future of NATO and the U.S. policy towards NATO, like funneling money in that direction, getting these countries to come to the table? But there's a lot of talk about, hey, at this NATO summit that Russia is about to attack Europe.
Well, the good news is that Russia is absolutely not about to attack Europe. It has no interest in doing that. I think Trump is right when he says in talking to President Putin that it's very clear that President Putin wants to end this war. Of course, President Putin wanted to end this whole thing 3 weeks into February. That's why they met with the Ukrainians in April of 2022 and crafted a compromise, a solution that would have been wonderful for Ukraine and ended this tragedy. Unfortunately, that failed miserably. We all know why. The last administration, with its friends in NATO, did everything they could to stop it. I don't think there is a future for NATO, to be perfectly frank. I think NATO is on its last legs. As far as this 5% increase, I wouldn't hold my breath. The Spaniards, the Slovaks, and others have said, are you kidding? We're not spending that kind of money. Who's driving this? Primarily France, Great Britain, and Germany. But there are other issues here. The Germans and the Italians have both come to us and said, by the way, we'd like to have our $145 billion worth of gold that you supposedly have in your vaults under New York City. Can we have that back? And thus far, the response is a deafening silence. I think there's a lot more going on under the surface, and I can tell you that President Trump arriving with his hat that says USA on it is cute, but not particularly impressive in Europe.
You know that most coffee out there is weak, it's acidic, it doesn't taste good, it's mass produced by corporations, it sits on shelves for so long that they don't even care what goes into your body. But 1775's Peaberry coffee is totally different. This stuff is fantastic. I'm a huge coffee fan, and this is a must-have in our coffee every morning in our house. So less than 5% of all beans qualify as Peaberry. They grow alone at high altitudes in Bolivia. They're handpicked to have maximum strength, clarity, and antioxidant power. It delivers better focus, clean energy, and smooth flavor without the crash or that chemical like aftertaste that so many bad coffees. Not this one, not from 1775. And like everything that 1775 does, it's organic. They make small batches of it, and it's sourced from real farmers and not factory farms. So visit 1775coffee.com and use the code REDACTED. Get 15% off. Drink coffee that actually makes sense and is actually good for you. Drink coffee that's actually telling the truth. Go to 1775coffee.com and use the code REDACTED to get 15% off. Thanks, 1775. We love you guys.
Now, the president said that about Iran and Israel yesterday. They don't know what the F they're doing because he knows that it's so volatile. And then on aboard Air Force One, he said, look, Iran can have a beautiful future. We want the best for them. And he started saying effusive things for Iran, which was not what he had said in his speech at Riyadh. He was very threatening in that manner. So it's hard for us to follow the diplomacy or the diplomacy theater. And, you know, why is he behaving like this? Has he somehow signaled to Israel, we're no longer bullying them on your behalf? Or do you think that we're just reading the tea leaves and that's a fool's errand?
I think we just have to stand back and wait and see, because frankly, he's being kind of incoherent. I mean, that's why I asked the question about what's the strategy. I'm always looking for the purpose that lies behind what people do. I haven't really figured it out. Now, one thing I can say with absolute certainty, and I like President Trump because of this. I know he doesn't want a war. I don't think there's any doubt about that. The question is he in a position to avoid it? Is he not necessarily so put upon by his, donors and the Congress, all of whom are collectively committed to the destruction of Iran and the establishment of a new order in the Middle East dominated by Israel? I don't know. And then again, you got to go back to this plan to dismember and destroy Iran. Sounds an awful lot like the plan to dismember and destroy Russia. Zelensky was the battering ram with his endless numbers of Ukrainians to be sacrificed on the battlefield to destroy Russia. We were going to expel Russia from the world. We were going to dethrone Putin and then ultimately put in a new government. We were going to strip Russia of her resources, divide her into piece parts, and pass it out. She would become a vassal state in the developing world. What do you hear now about behind the scenes about Iran? Essentially the same thing. We want the oil resources, the natural gas. We were going to break it up. You just pull up the Iran map and look at where all these various minorities are located or ethnic groups. Same kind of mentality. And then we're going to put somebody in that's going to be a good puppet and do what we in Israel tell them to do. That has failed. I think President Trump understands that. But does that mean the plan is dead? Does that mean the war is over? There will be no more fighting? No, I don't think so. And I don't know what would start it. I don't think the Iranians, per se, will be the first to fire another shot. If there's more fighting to be done, I think the Israelis will decide that. But I don't see any evidence that we're not going to support them and that we're not going to stand by them. I think we absolutely will. So I'm not sure what President Trump means this time. But, it's pretty tough to turn to people and say, look, we're really your friends. This is a friendly bombing exercise. Don't
right.
Understand that we're here with love and kisses. I don't think so.
Yeah, it does feel like theater. I think that is the perfect assessment. It's like we have to sit back because there's a bit of schizophrenia happening right now, and trying to map all of this out is very, very difficult. Who knows from 1 minute to the next, with a Truth Social post to a bombing campaign next, and then we're back to being friends again, and we want to make Iran great again. MIGA.
We'll all follow Natalie. We'll all follow Natalie's lead here and hope for the best.
Yeah, that's
Right.
always wise. I think it's
Can
a wise lesson. Go ahead, Philip.
Can I ask a quick question? But something about the, like, I hate to get in Natalie's way on this, but like the ruse doesn't make any sense, because if they're saying that Iran's nuclear material is now gone, they no longer have it. But if we know they have it and we're pretending like they don't, can they just go on enriching uranium without any IAEA oversight? Can they just do what they want now? Because what are we going to do? Say, well, Iran is now working towards nuclear weapons with what? If it's destroyed, what do they have?
Right.
Yeah.
First of all, I'm not sure we know. And if we do know, we're not telling anybody. Secondly, what's the big lesson that you learn if you're sitting in Tehran from all of this, or Riyadh, or Karachi, or Islamabad, or Cairo, or anywhere else? If you don't have a nuclear weapon, then the United States and its friends in Israel can come for you at any point in time they like. The lesson is you better get a nuclear weapon. That's the bad news. Now, the good news is the Iranians have said they will not leave the NPT, the Non-Proliferation Treaty. That's a very good thing. The problem is that treaty has no impact whatsoever on Israel, and Israel's not giving up anything. And we seem to want to make sure that Israel has a permanent monopoly on the nuclear weapon so that they can bomb, intimidate, threaten their neighbors at will, right? So I wouldn't be surprised at anything that happens from this point forward. But I think the notion that somehow or another everybody says, okay, that's fine, it's over now, we promise we won't do anything. I think we're going to see more nuclear weapons in more countries, unfortunately. That's the principal outcome.
Right. It's a chain reaction, but we have to remember that the first one in the region was Israel. But Philip makes a good point, because now why would the IAEA even ever go to Iran? Even though Iran has been working alongside the IAEA. We had Rafael Grossi say, we've inspected every gram. We know what they're up to. Even last year saying we found some at 60%. That wasn't so good. And Iran said, oops. But at least we had some kind of record. But now, why would they even go there? Like, oh, the U.S. blew it up. See you never. That doesn't make sense either, right?
Well, the bad news is we've also discovered that Grossi and the IAEA were reporting pretty faithfully to the Israelis.
Yeah.
No, they're
right.
comparable.
That was missed in just before the Israelis starting their bombing campaign. In fact, that may even be why the Israelis started their bombing campaign, is because Iran leaked these documents. This was front page news in the East and a blip in the West.
Yes. Well, that's your mainstream media. We've been down that road before. We understand. I think we just have to keep in mind that whether we like it or not, Israel and the lobby have an enormous amount of influence and control over the White House and the Hill. So how can we be certain of anything, regardless of what the president says? And by the way, I'm the first to stand up and say, I think President Trump's intentions are good. Unfortunately, intentions don't count for much in the environment where he's operating. You have to be a ruthless SOB in order to make your impact. And I've never seen him behave that way. I think he's too nice, to be frank.
Colonel Douglas McGregor, thank you so much for your assessment, as always. We appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks, Colonel.
Hey, thanks. Bye-bye.